Well, hello, everybody. We welcome you to this edition of News You Can Use. I'm your host, Thera Martin, and I am glad to be back with you with another edition of a wonderful LaSalle TV program. Today on the show, as we continue to observe Women's History Month, we're going to shine the spotlight on a wonderful lady by the name of Mrs. Ruth Wilson. And accompanying her is an outstanding historian, and we're talking about Gregory S. Cooke. And so they're going to tell a special story, going to talk about some history and talk about black women in history during World War II. So that will be in our first segment. When we turn the page a little bit later on in the show, we're going to talk with a young lady who is fiery and well-educated and prepared for the task. She is the chairperson for the Mayor's Commission on Women. Her name is Felicia Harris, and she's going to talk about some of the wonderful things they have going on over there. Again, we're celebrating women. This is Women's History Month. We'll be back in a moment. Hello, everybody, and we welcome you to this edition of our program. I'm the host, Thera Martin. Now, if you just turned the set on, you missed finding out who these two wonderful individuals are sitting next to me. To my far left, we have Mrs. Ruth Wilson, and she has a special story to share. And along with her, we have an outstanding historian, Gregory S. Cooke. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
And you are the one that made this interview happen. So special thank you to you and getting Mrs. Ruth Wilson here with us. I had an opportunity to see her and to hear her speak for the first time ever on Dr. King's National Holiday when we were at the Liberty Bell celebrating with the Martin Luther King Jr. Association for Nonviolence. And that's how I met you. Yes. And I just thank you for the connection. I've been needing to have a historian that I could reach out to from time to time to share with us and to educate our listeners at WURD and now here at our Comcast and Verizon Fios channels 56 and 36 with LaSalle TV. So let's start with you, Mr. Cooke. Give us some background on the Rosie the Riveter organization or how it got started.
Okay, for me personally, during World War II, my mother, when I was a little kid, my mother used to tell me this story about when she was 18 years old, she rode on her suitcase from Norfolk, Virginia to Washington, D.C. She got her very first job working for the U.S. Patent Office as a clerk typist. Mm-hmm. And she told me that story more than once, but that's all she ever told me. Mm-hmm. Many, many years later, I got involved in filmmaking and working on documentaries about African Americans in World War II, and I stumbled upon African American Rosie the Riveters. Mm-hmm. The term Rosie the Riveter stems from it was a government-sponsored program to get women to work in factories and government offices during World War II because traditionally that's not what they did. Yeah,
and because all of the men in America at that time who were able and willing, and some who were forced, had to go away to serve in the U.S. Armed Forces to try to keep the nation safe.
Yes, yes. And so as a result of that, there were about 20 million American women who went to work during World War II, and of that 20 million, there were approximately 600,000. I like to call them more hidden figures. There were 600,000 African American women who went into factories, government offices for the very first time. Wow. And you have to understand, historically, prior to World War II, most black women in America were either domestics or they were sharecroppers in the South. So World War II opened up all these doors of opportunity for black women in employment.
Yeah. As you talk, you bring back a few memories to me that are coming in bits and pieces. My father served in the United States Army for 26 years. He served in World War II and in the Korean conflict. And ultimately, his last stop was here in Philadelphia, because I've lived all across the country because my dad was stationed here, there, and everywhere. I was born on an Army base, Fort Benning, Georgia, proud of it, and all of that. But so I know a bit about the women stepping up to the plate because the men weren't here anymore. They had to go to war. And I remember here in Philadelphia, the Army base in South Philly, the name is escaping me. Quartermaster.
Exactly.
That's the last place my father was stationed, but even my auntie, who is now passed, used to be a seamstress down there. Yes. And that comes from the whole World War II piece.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and Rosie the Riveter basically applies to any woman who did non-traditional or men's work during World War II. So it could be a farmer, it could be someone who rode on a motorcycle, it could be a cab driver, bus driver, anything that men had traditionally done, or we now classify them as Rosie the Riveters.
Mrs. Ruth, would you please tell us a little bit about your experiences? You were one of those ladies, right?
Yes.
And we salute you today.
Well, thank you so much. Well, during World War II, I started at the Navy Yard laundry. And the ships had to go out. So they wanted the laundry to be ready when the ships had to leave. They wanted us to work on our lunch hour. While you're eating, feed the mangle with the sheets. I said I wouldn't do it. So I quit the job. Well, during World War II, you weren't allowed to quit a job because they needed everybody to work. So they sent me to school. 8th and Mifflin, the Bach Technical. I was taught to be a sheet metal worker. After
With your
about,
little self.
After about 8 weeks, I went to the Navy Yard. I worked with a mechanic, and we put in bulkheads, which were the walls on the ship. I worked on the USS Valley Forge, carried 100 planes, and that was in Dry Dock 5. I was a sheet metal worker from Shop 17.
Okay, so thank God you didn't get penalized for quitting the other job. They sent you to
They
school.
which was better for me.
Yeah.
I made more money.
Sure. How did the women fare overall, would you say, during your experience working down there at the Naval Shipyard?
Well, they fared better because they became much more money, had much more money. And then they had a vocation. And we just did what we had to do because the men weren't there. And we did a lot of men's jobs.
Did you feel a sense of pride knowing that you're helping the country?
Absolutely, because when you went to the movies and you saw what the men were going through in World War II over there, it was
But now
very
let me
good
give
for
you a twist on that. So when you went to the movies to see what the men were going through in World War II, were you able to sit anywhere in the movie theater?
No, not at all. Not at all.
You had to sit up in the balcony because of the color of your skin.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But even with that, you were still able to find in your heart a sense of pride and duty in what you were doing. That's great. That's great. Anything else that you would share about that time in your life and those experiences?
Well, I think a lot of the men that weren't able to go to war because they weren't health-wise, I think that was pride for them too, because they got to teach us what they knew. So I guess in that way, they were still helping with the war.
And how did the women fare once the war was over and the men started coming back home? Did you get kicked to the curb or were you okay?
I did, but some of them still stayed. They reapplied for certain jobs, and like my sister, stayed on.
Yes. Oh, very, very interesting.
She stayed on.
Very interesting. Do you mind me asking your age?
My age is 95.
Oh, my God.
And April 5th, I'll be 96 years old.
My. Well, if God allows me to see that year of life, I pray I look as good as you, even half as good as you, and I'll be all right.
Well, all you got to do is work.
Just keep working, and that keep you looking good. Oh, darn, I was ready to retire next year. You were beautiful.
Well, even if you retire, do something, keep your brain going.
Yes, I hear you, I hear you. And so now you have a wealth of history and knowledge in your head. You are a professor at Drexel University, correct?
Yes.
And you've got documentaries out. How do we see your work? Is your work accessible to the general public? Can we go to the library, or how do we get educated from you?
Well, right now I'm putting the finishing touches on a documentary called Invisible Warriors, African American Women in World War II. And it is about the 600,000 African American Rosies. The documentary is scheduled to premiere on February 10th of 2019 at the International House. I'm also having a luncheon to go along with that, where we will be honoring and giving awards to African American Rosie the Riveters.
Are there a lot left?
That's hard to say. I would imagine most of them are in their 90s of the 600,000. There are enough left to talk to them, to get information, but of course, like I said, most of them in their 90s and you know, varying degrees of health
Yes.
and what have you.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Now, if people want to know more about your documentary, your other work, and things that you will be doing, I know there's a book or two in you too, and or to find out how they can support your documentary, getting it out there to the world, or to buy a ticket maybe to come to the event next February of 2019 when you reveal for the first time, you do your screening, how can they be in touch?
They can get in touch by a couple of sources. One is through invisiblewarriorsfilm.com. That's all one word, invisiblewarriorsfilm.com. I'm also managing a educational nonprofit called the Basil and Becky Educational Nonprofit. Becky was my mother. And they can reach me at bbeef.org. So there are a couple of channels that they can go through, and there are trailers about the work I've done.
Great. Oh, great. This is good.
And people can make, you know, they can get in touch with me through email. The email addresses is there, and they can make donations if they choose to.
And we surely hope that they will do that. Check it out. Before we run out of time, Mrs. Ruth, would you share something real quick, a thought or two, maybe a word of advice for women of today? How can we stand up and be more like you and the other Rosies that existed?
Women just have to stand up and get out there and let your voices be heard.
Okay, okay. And the voting piece is so important. We get 2 elections every year. As long as you live and breathe and America stands, I believe we'll continue to have 2 elections every year, a primary and a general. You remember
have
a time
to
when,
vote.
but you remember a time when women could not vote.
Absolutely.
And how did that feel when you
Wonderful.
got to vote? Yeah.
Every time they put the ballots out, I'm out there.
You're there, so you don't miss
I
no
don't
election.
miss a vote.
Yes, yes,
We
yes.
have to vote.
Okay.
It means so much.
I know that there is so much history that you have, and it means so much to
Yes.
know our history. If you don't know from where you've come, how are you going to know where you're going? And if I could have my wish, you would be a guest speaker all over town until the minute you say, I'm tired, y'all, don't call me today to come anywhere. I would have you all over the place speaking to women, men, boys, and girls to encourage them what they can be, what they can do, because you know the struggle. You've been there, you've lived it. Yeah.
Yes.
So thank you for coming today so very much, and a special
Thanks
thank
for
you to your
having me.
beautiful daughter who helped to make for sure that you got here today. It was a long ride, but I hope you'll feel like it was worth it, and this show will be seen again and again and again to help tell the story of the Rosies.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for your service to our country.
Thank you.
All right. One more time, how can people get more information about the Rosies?
They can go to my website, invisiblewarriorsfilm.com, all one word, or they can go to bbeef.org.
All right.
And they can get information in both of those places.
We got it. I thank you so much
Thank
for
you so
coming. You
much.
are a blessing in disguise. I'm going to be wearing you out, asking you, please come, please call in. Just call in, lay in bed, talk to me on the phone, and help
My
educate
pleasure.
our listeners.
My
And we
pleasure.
thank you so much. God bless you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you for being here. I just talked to a lady who is a living legend.
Thank you.
All righty. We'll be back in just a moment as we turn the page on this edition of News You Can Use, and Felicia Harris will join us. She's the chairwoman for the Mayor's Commission on Women here in Philadelphia. Stay with us.
Life is hard. Effective consent is simple. Do not make hookup decisions if you won't remember them. For more information on sexual assault, visit nomore.org.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to this side of our show, News You Can Use, as we continue with our program. And I'm so excited. I have Felicia Harris back with me. She's been on the show once before, and we're glad that you're here today. From then till now, another Women's History Month is here in full effect, right?
Yes, I know.
Wow.
A lot of work is going on.
Yeah. Well, let me start by saying congratulations to the event that you all just had. You did well with that, right?
Yes, yes. We had a packed house. Last year we were at Community College for our annual summit, and this year we were at the National Museum of Jewish American History. We had over 500 women in attendance.
Ooh, wow.
Yeah, so
Talk
last year
about
was
social media. Does it ever work?
I know, this is our second annual. So our first annual we had about 300, now we're at 5. So we're already looking at bigger venues for next year.
Wow, that is beautiful. That's beautiful. What was the subject matter? What did you all address? Who was your guest speaker?
So what we did after our last summit is we took feedback from all the women in attendance to try to figure out what the Women's Commission would focus on. As women, there are so many different issues that impact us, and so we were able to narrow it down and focus in on economic empowerment over the past year. And from that, we formed working groups, and those working groups kind of informed the direction that this year's summit would take to kind of highlight and reflect the work that they've been doing over the past year. And so this past Friday, when we had the summit, we focused on economic empowerment, and we had breakout sessions on how to start a business, how to find your voice for our youth, and also how to break barriers in tech. And our keynote speaker for the entire event was Latasha Brown, who is the co-founder of Black Voters Matter.
Oh, that sounds like that was so dynamite, and I want to say congratulations to you and to the executive director for putting your thinking caps on along with your team to get things done and to make that a big success.
Yes, Jovita Hill, our executive director, keeps the needle moving. She's in the office every day making sure that work gets done. She's constantly fielding emails and phone calls. And I would say that the commissioners, there's 27 of us, we kind of act as a support to the work that she does.
Yes, yes. Well, I applaud our mayor, Jim Kinney, for being visionary enough and trusting enough to understand that a young woman could be the chair. Because historically, when I think about the Governor's Commission for Women, which I served on for 9 years, when I think about back to when I first came to even know there was such a thing as a Women's History Month, my mentor of all mentors, Barbara Daniel Cox, was the executive director of the Mayor's Commission for Women under W. Wilson Good. And she was an older lady, and everyone that I have known to chair such a body has been, you know, like 50 or older. So I just think it's really cool that the mayor said, let's go young for a change.
Yes,
and having the faith in you.
It's definitely been an honor and a privilege to serve in this capacity, especially at my age. I'm one of the youngest. I think there are 2 other commissioners who are around the same age as I am, but I think we have a great group of women. We're all diverse, not only in age, but in ethnicity and also in experience. And I know that one thing that I feel like I bring to the table as a leader in this particular group is that I listen to all parties. I know I do not know everything. I'm young, and I definitely appreciate the wisdom of those that not only came before me, but I'm working alongside. So when I go in, I don't go in and I try to set agendas. I go in and say, okay, everyone, what are you hearing from different women? What's going on in the community? And then how can we accommodate as many people as possible?
So what's next? After all of this work and putting together an event with 500 plus guests in the audience, what do you do to top that for the rest of the year? I mean, wow.
So we're going to keep our annual work going. We actually have public working groups, so women can work alongside with the commission. We constantly get questions from women. How can I get involved? How can I get engaged? We have working groups for entrepreneurship, mentorship, pay equity, health and wellness, and also education. And all of these groups are open to everyday women in the community. Each working group meets on its own once a month, and they kind of come together and they address different issues on a larger scale, and they also do different programming throughout the year. And so that's what we hope to keep doing, and we hope to continue to expand our impact through this work by engaging as many women as possible throughout the year.
Now, this is the first time that the city of Philadelphia has had a Mayor's Commission for Women in like years, right?
Yes.
So I applaud the mayor for that also. I mean, women count. We're important. You know, we're the mother of the earth.
Well, let's applaud Councilwoman Blondell Reynolds Brown and former Councilwoman Miriam B. Tasco.
Okay, will do.
Because prior to the commission coming back, it actually was because of those two women. They took the question to the voters on a ballot and asked if there should be a permanent commission for women.
And I said, heck yeah.
Everyone said yes. Majority vote said yes. And prior to that, it was under mayor's executive order. They could decide if they wanted to have a women's commission or not during their term. But now it's no longer an option. It's mandated.
All right.
And
That's
so there will
wonderful.
always be a
Good,
Philadelphia
good, good.
Commission for Women going forward.
All right, sounds good to me. Now, how can ladies who are watching the program today be in touch with the Mayor's Commission for Women?
You can call our office or you can visit us online. You can go to phila.gov, and when you go to the website, you just type in Commission for Women, and our page will pop up. Yep, all of our working groups are listed there, our mission, and also the contact information for the office.
Then I think you have photos of events that you all have done, and,
Yes.
and there's some other information on the website as well. I think I saw a press release. I looked at it recently.
Well, people can download a copy of the report that we released last year on the state of women and girls in Philadelphia. And so if you look at that report, you'll see a lot of different stories that were shared by everyday women about the things that they've experienced as women. And we're kind of using that as a blueprint for what we're doing over the next few years.
Yeah. Okay. All right, that sounds good too, and we appreciate it. Felicia Harris is our guest, and she is the chair of the Mayor's Commission on Women here in the city of Philadelphia. She's also a vice president of the Philadelphia branch of the NAACP. She's a business owner in her own right, well-seasoned, doing your thing. I want to now use you as an example. We're celebrating Women's History Month, right? And I'm prayerful that there are some mothers who are listening right now, or grandmoms like me. Go grab your young girls that are in the house. If you have a neighbor next door to a young girl, go grab her real quick. Come back. Sit in front of the TV right now with Felicia Harris. Tell us a little bit about your steps to success, to where you are today. And I look at you as successful. I don't know your bank account. I don't need to know. That's not my business to know. But I know you're doing things. I know you're making a difference, and you're making an impact all at the same time. And you're young. So tell us about how you got to where you are. Did you study hard? Did you go to college? Did you prepare?
Yes, all of those things.
I knew it.
So I'm a graduate of Howard University, and I actually just completed my master's at Temple University in Organizational Development last May. So education has always been a foundation that my parents instilled in me to open doors to new opportunities. And I also say that the other part is just showing up. So my parents used to say that all the time. Even if you feel like you're not good at something, just show up. And I even use that now as an adult. And so when people say, oh, how did you become chair of the commission? How did you become third vice president? How did you start your own nonprofit? I'm like, well, someone invited me and I showed up. Yes. And a lot of times when I showed up, I was the youngest person in the room. And contrary to belief, there are generations, you know, from before us that are looking to pass the torch, but they need to pass the torch to someone, so you have to show up. So I say show up, get engaged. Don't be scared to try new things. I think that when you feel like you're the only woman in the room or the youngest person in the room, you don't want to go. That's the perfect time to go because opportunities are there.
Very, very good. Well, I'm glad, and thank you for sharing your tips of success. And for any young folks that were able to be gathered that quickly in front of the television screen, I hope you got it. And the education is key. Education is the passport to the future, and you got to prepare yourself, and you got to work to reach success. And I know you still have goals and dreams ahead, and I imagine in another 2 years you'll be like, boom, all blown up completely across the country. You mentioned a nonprofit. I know you have a business, like it's with PR, marketing, advertising. Yes. Right? And now tell me about the nonprofit real quick before we run out of time.
So nonprofit Influencing Action Movement, we've been around for 7 years now.
Say that again slower.
Influencing Action Movement.
Okay.
A lot of people know us in the community as I Am Mentoring because we have two programs, I Am Mentoring for high school students, which runs concurrent to the school year, where we provide programming for high school students at Temple University. Well, we meet at Temple University, and they get mentors, and those mentors happen to be from our I Am Mentoring for Professionals initiative, where we actually match young professionals with CEOs and executives of companies to help them in their careers. In exchange, they pay it forward by mentoring a young person in high school.
Oh, that is so neat. I love it. I love the concept, and you're doing great work. If people want to be in touch with you about your nonprofit or about your business, you need some PR, call her. How can they do that? Is
You
there a
can
phone number or,
Yeah, you can, so my business
or
line.
website, whatever you want to put up?
Business line for both the nonprofit and my business is 267-225-3108. Or you can also find me on the web, High Touch Inc., HITOUCHINC.com.
All right, I want to thank you so much for coming. I'm proud of you, and I'm glad I had an opportunity to get to know you, Miss Felicia Harris. My
Thank
sis,
you.
my
Thank
sis.
you. Thank you
All
for
right.
having me.
All right, and you're doing a wonderful job of One Day at a Time, too. Boom, they're getting better and better than ever. Yeah, you heard me say it, Mel. That's it for us in this edition of News You Can Use, everybody. We want to thank you for checking us out. I also encourage you to check out my radio program on WURD. That's 96.1 FM, 900 AM, and we're on Mondays through Fridays, 6 to 7 a.m. I know it's early in the morning, but there are early birds out there checking us out, and you can do that, too. You can also watch and listen to the show at wordradio.com or on Facebook Live. Just type in Thera Martin on Facebook and you'll get to me. That's where we do the show as well. But listen on the radio, listen on the internet, listen however you can. And again, we thank you for joining us for this edition of News You Can Use. Remember, everybody, that life is fragile. Handle it with prayer. Bye-bye.